It's 90 seconds to midnight in the Canadian province of Nova Scotia and Venezuela as the U.S. East Coast is about to enter its final hour of the century.
CNN's coverage of this new millennium this hour features a contrast of cultures and venues in North and South America.
We'll go live to the street party in the Venezuelan capital, Caracas.
And they'll be parading through Halifax as 2000 hits another Canadian province. CNN continues its Millennium 2000 coverage right now.
In the upper left-hand corner, Caracas, Venezuela's largest city. The year 2000 is here in 15 seconds.
Time marching onward to midnight in New York's famed square.
In the District of Columbia, Washington, it's 1 hour and counting as President Clinton joins thousands on the Mall.
Preparing to dine, dance, and celebrate in the windy city of Chicago.
These are live pictures of Caracas, Venezuela, where the clock has just struck midnight. You can see rockets going up and moving quickly up North America to Halifax, Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia, one of the Canadian provinces on the eastern shore of Canada.
They're going to have 4 parties at the World Trade and Convention Center in Halifax Metro Center, each one geared to a different pocketbook. How's this? The tickets range from $15 to $500.
And as we go from the clearly celebratory picture there, Bernie, in Halifax in Nova Scotia, we go to a picture of darkness, although as Mark Potter told us a little while ago, there are fireworks, but they are fireworks that have been pulled together by individuals, by private concerns. Mark Potter, tell us about the mood in that city and that country that has so recently confronted tragedy.
Well, Judy, we have sort of a mixed mood here in Caracas. As you can see from these pictures, there is some degree of celebration. We are seeing a lot of fireworks now that it is the new year in Caracas. We're certainly hearing those fireworks. As you said, what's interesting about this is that this is being done by private citizens from their homes, from their yards. This is not part of an organized New Year's or Millennium celebration. Those were canceled. The government is not sponsoring any sort of national party. This is in response, of course, to the tragedy you were just talking about. 2.5 weeks ago, this country was hit by a natural disaster, mudslides, floods, avalanches just northeast of the capital, destroyed a number of communities, killed 15 to 50,000 people, left 400,000 people homeless. So that has certainly dampened the national mood. And so while we are seeing fireworks here in Venezuela, many people in this country are not celebrating. They are very concerned. They are worried. They are not celebrating the millennium. Judy?
Mark Potter in Caracas, Venezuela. Quite a contrast to what is happening in Times Square.
Oh, certainly.
Fred Hickman's there.
Indeed, I am, Bernie and Judy. It is an odyssey going on now as you look back behind me. This is going toward Times Square and then beyond to the south there, and this celebration being called Odyssey. You know, Times Square is the home of Broadway. There are some 3 dozen theaters here, none of them, of course, open for business tonight as we have a bit of a larger show going on right now. But I can tell you that we've had basically 24 Broadway productions happening all day long since the pre-dawn hour, this being one of them, the penultimate one before we get into, of course, the big celebration for New Year's here in New York. but I thought I would share with you just a bit of the history of Times Square. This is a place that actually attained the name of Times Square back in 1904. It was then Longacre Square, a big horse trading capital here in New York, and it was purchased by the New York Times newspaper. That year, to celebrate the occasion, there was a little fireworks show off the roof of the building. It became a tradition. In 1907, then we began having the ball drop, and it's been going on ever since, and this is going to be the biggest and the best. In fact, they're saying that this is the biggest single celebration that the city has ever had of any kind at any time. The actual history of the ball drop itself goes back to the 16th century. Balls were dropped usually in maritime areas to kind of give people an idea of what time it was so that they could set their watches and their various timepieces. And so that is not a new idea, but what we're doing here is certainly just a wonderful thing. Sellout, yes, indeed, in fact, it is. The first time it's ever been sold out for this particular event. When I say sell out, the tickets certainly are not for sale, but there is simply no more room for any more people. People are spilling all the way back to 34th Street behind me here. They've never gone back that far, and then 59th all the way to the north, and we're bordered on either side by 6th and 8th Avenues. So we are ready for the celebration to begin. The balls have been passed out. The Puerto Rican flags, you may have seen quite a few of those, as Puerto Rico is celebrating the arrival of the millennium, and there's a great Puerto Rican population here in New York City. So it's beginning to swell, and we're beginning to get the feeling that something very special is going to happen very shortly. At the bottom of the hour, Mayor Rudolph Giuliani will be joining me. He, along with surgeon Dr. Mary Ann Hopkins, with Doctors Without Borders and also Bellevue Hospital here, will both push another crystal cylinder, which is actually the button that will start the ball down its way. That'll happen at 11:59, but the mayor will talk with us about all of the different safety issues and concerns that they've addressed, and addressed very well here in New York City as we prepare for the new millennium to arrive here. And I'm telling you, I know my good friend Wolf Blitzer is expecting big things in Washington, and it's going to be great, but they're going to be hard-pressed to top us here in New York. Bernie, Judy?
We're going to see Fred. Washington, D.C., Havana, Cuba, two political capitals poles apart, but we're going to pull them closer to you through the magic of television when we come back. The nation's capital on the Mall, 1999, only here for a few more moments. Wolf Blitzer, what's it like?
Bernie, I've been covering Washington for about 20 years, and you and Judy, of course, have covered this city, and we've seen a lot of events here on the Washington Mall, along the reflecting pool, between the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, all the way up to Capitol Hill. I got to tell you, this is a sea of humanity in here. This place is packed. People can't move alongside both sides of this reflecting pool, and I don't care what Fred Hickman said about Times Square. This city, the nation's capital, has nothing to be ashamed of. A lot more people showed up tonight than I think any of the planners had anticipated, given the relatively mild weather, the spectacular performance that's still ongoing right now, and it's about to culminate in about 20 minutes or so with a Steven Spielberg 18-minute film reflecting some of the accomplishments of the 20th century. But this crowd is really, really excited as they're getting ready for midnight. And we're told at midnight, the sound and light show, the fireworks that we're going to see here on the nation's capital, something that's never been seen before, despite the bicentennial, the inaugurations, the July 4th. This is going to be something very, very special tonight. Now, the performers have been singing all night. One of them was Don McLean, the songwriter of American Pie, 1971, that's become a classic. I had a chance to speak to Don McLean only a few minutes ago. Here's that interview.
I never thought I'd be around this long, so I'm, thrilled to still be around and still functioning reasonably well.
You know, so many of the performers have said the same thing. I've asked them, how do you feel about performing tonight? They've all been saying, well, we never thought we'd be here at the end of this millennium, at the beginning of the next.
If I can jump this millennium fence, I'm good for another 30 years.
Another 30 years would be good. What's happening in your life right now? Tell us about your performances.
Well, I have a wonderful PBS television special coming up in March, an hour and a half. That's a wonderful break with Garth Brooks and Nancy Griffith as my special guest. And I am recording and doing all kinds of one-nighters and Just very busy with all kinds of business things, so I'm very happy.
You've never done anything is sort of like what you're doing tonight, participating in front of these thousands and thousands of people.
Well, the only thing that ever came close to this was when Garth Brooks had me as a guest at Central Park, which was one of the nicest things that ever happened to me in this business. And since then, wonderful things have been happening. So,
did you have a chance to meet the President and the First Lady?
Yes, I did. That was quite a wonderful experience as well. They treated us wonderfully, and we had a Millennium dinner, which I just came from. So I won't have any trouble remembering where I was when the century ended.
I don't think I'll have any trouble either. I don't think the hundreds of thousands of people...
I hope you get out alive.
Yeah, we'll get out, but thanks so much for joining us.
All right.
And Happy New Year.
Thank you.
And we're back here live here at the Washington Mall. This place is packed, excited, and probably among the most excited. We had a chance to spot him only a few minutes ago. The President of the United States, Bill Clinton. He was listening to John Fogerty, formerly of Creedence Clearwater Revival, and the President was rocking and rolling as they were singing a medley of very, very popular rock and roll songs. This place is simply packed. You see that 1999. It's going to turn eventually, of course, within the hour to the year 2000. Behind the Lincoln Memorial, we're going to see something that we've never seen in Washington before. We had a chance to speak to George Stevens Jr., who's one of the producers, together with Quincy Jones. They've produced a spectacular sound and light show. When you see at midnight what is going to be coming up behind the Lincoln Memorial, Times Square, and that crystal ball and all of that, that will prove to be modest compared to what the nation's capital has going. I don't know if Fred Hickman can hear me, but he'll be excited to see what's happening here in Washington. Bernie and Judy.
Wolf, are you excited or what?
Very excited over here.
If I didn't know better, Wolf Blitzer, I think you were trying to set up some kind of competition with Fred.
Fred Hickman, if you can hear me, get on a plane, take that shuttle to Washington.
Two guys, I think it's fair to say they're both covering a pretty special celebration. Well, as Bernie said a minute ago, in the political world, it's been very difficult to get Washington and Havana together, but we are going to do it right now. We're going to take you from Washington all the way to Havana, the capital of Cuba, to our own Lucia Newman. And Lucia, is it right that the Cuban government does not recognize a New Year's Eve, the New Year's holiday?
Good evening, Judy. Indeed, in Cuba, while the people do celebrate New Year's Eve, the coming of a new year, in this country, the bringing in of the new millennium will not occur officially until December 31st of next year, because they are going strictly by the Gregorian calendar. Now, as you can see, we're coming to you live from the Tropicana, Cuba's best-known nightclub, which was founded in 1939. The Tropicana is one of the few institutions to have survived in this country in a century that was marked by a revolution and economic upheaval. Most of the people here tonight, Judy and Bernie, are from other countries, people who came here to bring in the new millennium from a nation that many see as still being in many ways in the past. Cuba is the only country in the hemisphere which is still holding on firmly and proudly to communism, despite its demise in many, many other parts of the world. And speaking of differences, Cuba is one of the few countries where Y2K is not an obsession. Ask many Cubans what they think about Y2K, and they're likely to answer, Y2 what?
¿Cómo?
What?
I don't know anything about it.
La verdad que no te sé decir nada.
To be honest, I don't understand it.
It's not so much due to an absence of information, but rather because most see the potential problems as irrelevant to them. The reason? The majority of Cubans have no access to the internet or even computers. And where they are used, their role is usually not critical.
El nivel de informatización de nuestra sociedad.
The level of computerization in our society is not at the level of more developed nations. That means that our main systems interact, giving accessory information to vital services. After collecting data, it is a human being that makes the final decisions.
In other words, in Cuba, the supply of water, electricity, and other utilities is controlled by people, not by computers. Cuban banks were using the same systems in vogue before the 1959 revolution until just 4 years ago, when they decided to automate.
The computers and programs available after 1994 in general deal adequately with the problem of the Y2K.
The same is true for Cuba's new international airports, which authorities say are free of the Y2K bug. Cuba's Y2K Commission, in fact, has declared the country free of any major complications. Paradoxically, in fact, Cuba's relative tardiness in catching up with the technology of the 21st century has turned out to be, at least as far as Y2K is concerned, a blessing in disguise. Judy and Bernie?
Thank you, Lucia, reporting from Havana, where it's 44 minutes and counting. And Bernie, when we come back, we're going to stop in on Las Vegas, a place where you might say the secular is king. But before we do, a quick glimpse of two places where the spiritual reigns supreme: sunrise over Bethlehem, sunrise over Jerusalem.